You had a 130-pound athlete in the UFC fighting a 225-pound athlete in the UFC.
Welcome, everybody, to the Not For Nothing podcast, hosted by Christopher Michael and Robert Evan, discussing everything from relationships to everyday life struggles, culture, and much more.
All right, so we're back. What's going on, Robbie?
Not much, my man. Enjoying our new digs still.
Good. Oh, yeah, it's actually the afternoon now. Wow, look at that.
On my watch. 12:15.
Yeah, but how do you like the new digs?
I'm a big fan. It's nice having like the natural light. It's nice having kind of like our setup. We can come in, Doug can do his thing, and
The view of the canal.
the intercoastal, as they call it.
The intercoastal, right? The intercoastal. Oh, man. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice. We hope you're all enjoying it.
I want a boat.
Yeah, I want a boat, too. They're just such a bad investment.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's worse than buying a car, right?
You know what it is? I just don't have the time to use it.
And maintenance.
The main,
Upkeep.
Yeah, the upkeep, but it's more, I would just hate to have to upkeep something I don't use.
Bill Burr,
ever.
you don't want to be a guy who has the boat. You want to be a guy who has a friend who has a boat. And you
Right.
just show up with
Exactly.
a six-pack. So you're not scraping barnacles off the side of
Dude,
that shit.
I'd rather just go to one of these boat clubs and rent out whatever fucking boat I want.
Oh, they have that down here, right? That's
yeah,
pretty
yeah. Because I don't
prominent.
think you need, and don't quote me on this, the licensing is different in Florida than it is in New York.
Can you, are there, I know in New York you can rent like pontoons.
Yeah, I think you just need a course here, and then you can go wherever the fuck you want. Yeah. Florida's the Wild West, man. You know?
Dude, Florida's like, hey, you know what a boat is? Yeah, fuck it. Get on, sailor.
You know how to make right turns? Oh, you're good to go. Do you know what a knot is?
Do you know what up and down? Because this goes faster, this goes
This
slower.
is starboard. This is port.
Starboard's left, right?
Starboard's left, port's right.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that, I always think of Lethal Weapon 4 with Joe Pesci and Danny Glover.
I have seen it.
He goes, what did he say? He goes, all these people, they buy these boats, they get into these fucking nautical terms. Aft, bash me landlubbers. He goes on this tear.
How
it's
fast
a
is it?
hilarious scene.
Do you know?
I don't know how fast the knot is, actually. It's probably why I shouldn't be driving a boat.
Yeah, they're like, hey, he's going 20 knots. I'm like, is that 4 miles an hour or 400?
We should actually look that up. Let's
knot?
see. I'm kind of curious. How fast is a knot?
A nautical knot.
A knot. Let's see. Let's just open up a new page here on my fancy new laptop.
Oh, you bought a new one? That's
Yeah, I
nice.
just bought it. This fucking thing is amazing. I love it.
Yeah, can't wait to take it home.
I can't wait to take it home
Yeah,
either.
can't wait to pawn it.
Let's see. How do you open up a new window on this thing?
Don't you feel like an idiot when you
really
try to
do,
use a
right?
Mac?
I guess I'm just going to have to log out of whatever I
I
have
use
here.
a Dell.
How
Probably just look it up on my phone much quicker.
is knots in miles per hour? No, in kilometers.
What is this? England?
No, I was joking, obviously.
1750? Give me that bitch in
It was just, I
MPHs.
felt like it was just such a stupid question. So it's basically almost equal ratio.
Not to mile.
Yeah, it's 1.15 to 1. So it's almost
So
a mile.
50 miles would be 56 knots, or the inverse.
So it's fine. I think give this the exact converter right here. So 56 miles an hour is 56 knots is 64 miles per hour.
Okay, so it's the inverse.
Right. So now that we've cleared that up, softer way to enter the show because we're going to get into a pretty sensitive topic here.
Yeah.
Robbie's been very excited about this. He's been saying he's wanted to talk about it for, about a week or two now? He wanted to talk about this?
I've been sprinting towards us with gasoline boots.
Haven't
Sprinting
you?
the hell with gasoline
I
boots.
mean, fuck,
No.
you just nonstop and asking me to talk about this. So let's get it done. No, actually, this is my brainchild. I won't put it on Robbie. So yeah, man, I think one of like the big topics today is trans women in female sports.
Right.
And I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, for me, and I just want to go and put on the record that I have nothing against transgenders, women, men, in any way, shape, or form. You want to identify as a man, as a woman, great. I'm all for it. I will even respect your wishes and refer to you by whatever pronouns you want.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that at all. I don't see an argument for people that really do. I think everybody should be respected in life. Mm-hmm. I think if somebody wants you to address them a certain way, if it doesn't affect your life in some negative way, you should have no reason not to want to do it. So on that note, there are certain lines that I have drawn. One of them would just basically be trans women competing against females in their space. Not because I have anything against them, just simply think that it puts females at a huge physical disadvantage.
Yeah.
And those are spaces that women have worked hard for throughout history. to get those safe spaces where men can't infiltrate them.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand that trans women identify as women, so they don't look at it that way. I do understand that side of it, but the reality of it is they still have a huge biological advantage.
Yeah.
And I've heard the argument before that, well, do you agree that a trans woman should not be competing against a cis male? I absolutely do. I've heard that argument from transgender females or trans women. But what they don't say, and for some reason, they have to look at the other side of it. You also, if you're going to look at it that way, you need to look at it as, should a cis female, competing against a trans woman? It goes both ways.
It does.
They shouldn't. That minor disadvantage you're saying trans women have against cis males is the same disadvantage that cis females have against trans women. So I understand they fall into the middle, but the disadvantage is up above them just as it is down below them.
I think the way I'm looking at it is this, and just like you, I want to preface this by saying I 100% support the trans community.
Right.
If you feel that you are not born into the body that you should be in, if you feel that you need to transition from a woman to a man to a woman, not only does it not bother me, I support you 1 billion%.
Absolutely, as you should.
If whatever you want, trans, cis, gay, straight, bi, it's all beautiful. I support whatever you feel. Whoever you feel you need to be, I'm supporting you 100%.
Right.
However, when it comes to competition and athletics, I do believe, and this, I don't want to say it's going to be a hot take because based off of the research that we've done, and we'll post all of those links where we've gotten our information so people can see where we sourced our info.
Absolutely.
There is 100% a biological advantage that individuals who are born male have over individuals who are born female. That is science. It is indisputable.
Absolutely.
So when I look at this from a 30,000-foot view, the first thing I look at is, let's start with just competition between females and competition between males. When you're younger, let's say you want to start playing a sport. You're 7 years old. You want to start playing soccer. There's a reason that you play with 7, 8, 9-year-olds, for example. Maybe there's that age range, but there's a reason you don't have 7, 8-year-olds play against 15 and 16-year-olds. It's because 15 and 16-year-olds at that point, most of them probably are going through puberty and they have a physiological advantage over the 7 to 8-year-olds.
Right, absolutely.
One, they're physically larger at that point.
Right.
They probably, if they're going through puberty, they have increased red blood cells, increased muscle mass, increased lung capacity.
Right, testosterone levels.
They are at a physiological advantage to the 7 and 8-year-old boys. On average, in the U.S. or in the world, men are larger and they have a larger physiological advantage over women.
They do.
So when you start introducing a trans athlete, let's just use the example of a trans woman, a male, born biologically male, transitioning into a female, and they start competing with other females, they are still biologically male. They still have different chromosomes, and even if you're taking, let's say, testosterone, what is it?
Or like a testosterone inhibitor?
Yeah, inhibitor, that's the word.
Right.
So if you're taking testosterone inhibitors and it's reducing your testosterone, if you're taking estrogen to increase your estrogen, you're still biologically a male.
Right.
It's not going to change the fact that post-puberty, you have inherent physiological differences than female. So when you look at other athletes, not just the age, for example, you look at in boxing, we're talking about the other day, boxing and UFC, you have weight categories as well, correct?
Right, correct.
They do that to protect the athletes.
Right.
They do that because if you had a 130-pound athlete in the UFC fighting a 225-pound athlete in the UFC, who's going to win 99.999?
Well, the crazy thing is they overlook those things. Like if you're going to try to make an argument for trans women versus cis females, I mean, you got to look at things like that, right? Like they have classifications like that to protect male athletes versus other male athletes.
Right.
Right. And most would say they're probably more on an even playing field than if a woman was to enter the male forum in athletics. So if they have those classifications to protect men versus men, what would be any different between a cis female and a trans woman? I mean, you have to have the same boundaries between the two. And I understand that the advantage diminishes, not hugely, but from, I think I read somewhere from 10 to 3% when they transition to female, right? Trans woman.
Wait, explain that.
So they're saying that there's a 10% advantage from male versus female at the highest level.
Okay.
And throughout transitioning to trans women, that advantage drops to 3%. Now, and this is at the highest level, and that's fine. But 3% at the highest level is a huge gap to begin with. And that's almost the equivalent to a cis woman playing against another woman who's on steroids. Your advantage should be 0. It shouldn't drop from 10 to 3%. It should be 0%. It needs to go back to an even playing field. You can't say, oh, it comes down so much that we're almost on an even playing field. There is no almost. Everything, all things must be equal. Now, does that mean that some athletes aren't better than others? No, of course not. But there's different factors that come into play for that.
Yeah.
It's not because they're physiologically more advanced than the people they're competing against. It could be skill set. It could be training. It could be who they had coaching them. We've talked about this before. The avenues that they had available to them while they were coming up in the sport. You know, the connections that they had to get into sports quicker, had an easier ladder to climb than most. I mean, there could be any number of reasons that they have those advantages, but they're not physiological.
Right.
And when you can say that there is a clear physiological advantage between trans women and cis females, that should be all that needs to be said.
I want to get into some of the specific biological differences from, the research that we've done. So when talking about biological differences, male and female bodies typically have, again, this is the average.
Right.
Right. And so we talked about this prior to. I'm not saying if I got into a race with Sha'Carri Richardson that she wouldn't smoke me. She would destroy me. Rose what's her name?
Namajunas
in UFC.
Yeah.
She would body me.
Right.
But on average, there is a physiological, biological difference. So when talking about male versus female bodies, the inherent physical differences typically include muscle mass, bone density, and testosterone levels. And it's contended that transgender women assigned male at birth might retain physical advantages even after hormone therapy. Specifically, and there's a few things here, so we'll go over them one by one, muscle mass and strength. On average, men tend to have greater muscle mass and physical strength than women. This is influenced generally by higher levels of testosterone, a hormone that plays a significant role in muscle development.
Right.
So it is widely believed and accepted that after puberty, post-puberty,
right,
your testosterone is your testosterone, your estrogen is your estrogen. So if you're male, it is what it is. You're female, it is what it is. It's not to say you cannot supplement it and take testosterone if you're a man.
But that would be against the rules of sports.
In the world of sports, yes.
Right.
Taking T, as they call it.
Right.
Another one is cardiovascular system. Women's hearts and blood vessels are often smaller than men's.
Right.
But women tend to have a higher percentage of body fat, which affects cardiovascular dynamics.
Right.
So on average, if you have men, and there's another one here, red blood cell count, men typically have a higher red blood cell count than women, contributing to a difference in oxygen carrying capacity and endurance.
Correct.
There's a reason when you look at stats on average, if you look at the world's fastest marathon runners, it's on average men. I'm not saying that there aren't women who can run faster than men.
There is.
But the top performers are men.
I mean, listen, you can compare a top 5 athlete to the top 100th in the male category. They probably still would lose.
Yeah.
They just would. But yeah, of course, if you're going to compare a non-athlete to an athlete, I mean, any professional athlete,
Right,
male or female, is going to beat a non-athlete.
But talking
more times than not.
A fair competition, top tier
right,
versus top tier, there is a distinguishable difference.
Absolutely.
No.
It's undeniable. I mean, and Leah Thompson proved that.
What was the stat where she was like a top 500
So
swimmer?
Leah Thompson was ranked 456 in the world.
Leah Thompson was a swimmer for UPenn.
She
born male, transitioned to woman.
Correct. She transitioned to a woman. She swam for Penn. And basically she was ranked 456 on the male's Penn team. And then when she came over to the women, she just dominated. She destroyed every world record in multiple classifications of the sport and just obliterated everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And it's not fair to those women. And the biggest advocates for that argument were Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon.
And those were the women.
Those are the two women that spoke out primarily against her, who were her teammates. The problem for me, outside of all the information that's out there and the facts, and yeah, of course, everything we talk about should be based around facts. But let's just talk about for a second the morality of it all. Okay? Now, and this is my personal belief. Is it immoral? I'm not saying it's immoral, but I'm saying these women work their whole lives to achieve the accomplishments that they achieve. I mean, if you're a professional athlete or a collegiate athlete on any level, and you understand what it takes to get to where these men and women are, okay, and you have really any grasp of it, then you would understand why it's so sensitive to them to have someone with such an advantage come in and completely obliterate everything they've worked for.
Yeah.
I mean, taking records, if they keep going down
And
this
not
road,
team records, national records.
world records that were set by Olympians, she broke. I mean, it's outrageous. And if they keep going down this path, they're going to completely eliminate a space that's sacred to women. I mean, for me, the biggest thing is this, and I'm going to kind of go on a tangent here a little bit, because I just keep thinking about, listen, women have been under the thumb of men for an infinite amount of time, okay? And I was kind of just looking up things that women went through throughout the course of history, okay? It wasn't until 1882 that they passed the Married Women's Property Act, which finally gave women the right to not be considered the property of a man. Okay? And I'm just going to go down the line of this so that you understand how hard women had to work to gain these safe spaces that they have today and why it bothers me from that standpoint.
That's fair.
It wasn't until August 1920 that the 19th Amendment was granted and they finally got the right to vote, okay? Even then, they still had problems in society because it was completely male-run. Not till 1923 did the Equal Rights Amendment pass, where they introduced into Congress to give all women all other rights consistent with the Constitution, such as property, employment, and education.
What year was that?
This was 1923.
So literally 100 years ago.
100 years ago.
Women couldn't own property up until 100 years ago.
Right, and get this one, not till 1974, 74, mind you. This is
So not even 50 years ago.
It's not even 50 years. This is 9 years before I was born. A woman could not open a bank account without the co-signer of her husband. So it was in 1974 that they passed the Equal Credit Opportunity Act that allowed women to open bank accounts without the co-signer of a husband. And the crazier thing about it is they were actually technically allowed to do it in 1960, but the banks who were male-run refused to recognize that they had been given the right to do that. So they passed the act in 1974 so that they could not be refused the accounts anymore. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
Yeah,
right?
so you're talking less than 50 years ago.
Right, less than 50 years ago.
Our parents' generation.
Dude, it's
So,
outrageous.
you know, my mom, your mom
Right.
could not go into a bank, and I think they would have been underage at that point. Yeah, they definitely would have been underage anyway, but
No, I mean, my mother would have been, I mean, I guess she
Close
was. So,
to it.
right, close to it.
But, yeah.
But the point I'm making is that women have been under the thumb of men and been fighting for these spaces in society for over 100 years. I mean, we could go even further back to a point where women weren't even governed by the same laws. They had no protection underneath the laws in our country unless they were the property of men in which they had to be married to them. Mm-hmm. So throughout the course of time, women have always been fighting to gain ground in a society ran by men. And even through all of that, even now in the current day, these women still have to deal with the likes of people like Harvey Weinsteins of the world. So they're still not free of it. And now, somehow, some way, men have found another way to infiltrate what should be a safe space for females. And that's not to take away from trans women. Listen, again, I say I have nothing against the transgender community. I think everybody's entitled to be happy in life. And whatever that looks like for you, I applaud you for chasing it. I do. But where I have a problem is when your happiness in life starts to come at the expense of other people. Once you start to cross that line, that is an issue for me. When you start to trample on the hopes and dreams of other people to get where you want to be, wherever happiness is for you, that I take a problem with.
yeah.
And I give you that history to show you what these women had to do throughout the last 100 years just to gain what they have today. And now what, we're going to set them back and we're going to start saying, hey, you now have to compete with men or trans women who are male born and you have to deal with it and you have no choice. This is what it is. This is the social norm today. Either get with it or what they do for, who was it? For Paula Scanlon. They tried to offer her at Penn, the basically therapy sessions to conform to the new societal norm of trans women being in the female locker rooms. That was their answer to her feeling uncomfortable in that situation.
Yeah, so much of this is so new that I think so many people are still trying to figure out what is quote unquote the correct answer,
Right.
or the correct way to handle this, right? Because no one ever wants to be on the wrong side of history. And to your point too, you want to be inclusive. You want everybody to feel welcome. You want to embrace people for the skin that they feel
Absolutely.
that they are. I could not agree with that more. Here's the thing. I don't have the answer, right?
I don't think anybody does.
Right. I don't think many people do, because I think if they did, we probably wouldn't be having this debate in the first place. I don't have a miracle answer for you. I can just simply offer that my position is that women, trans women competing in sports alongside naturally born women, have a genetic disposition to be better.
Of course they do. And
It's
listen,
a fact.
I
It's
don't,
science. You cannot dispute that.
No, I don't think anybody is going to ever come up with a magic answer for it. But I do think in the process of searching for an answer that satisfies everyone, there has to be boundaries set that can't be crossed. That's it. Everybody has to live equally and comfortably in the same society together. We can't impose our will on everybody. It's just not right. I don't care who you are, how you identify. I don't care if you're gay, lesbian, trans, straight. You just can't find happiness for yourself through the expense of others. I just feel that way about it. And if you feel that you are, then you should back up a little bit. You really shouldn't. And as far as athletes go, as an athlete, and I get this, and keep in mind, I'm putting this in perspective, I understand fully that trans women and trans men don't enter these sports. Now, I can't say that not everyone does, because I don't know everybody in the trans community, but I would imagine, giving people credit as human beings, they don't enter into these sports as trans men and women because they want the physical advantage that they have.
Correct.
I don't believe that they do that.
Right. I don't think they're out here saying, you know what, can't do steroids, so what else can I do? No. Yeah.
But what I don't believe is I don't believe that anyone, especially athletes at that level, are naive enough to think that they don't truly have an advantage over the people they're competing against.
Yeah.
And as an athlete at the highest level, okay, and I'm sorry, if you know that you possess that type of advantage and you still decide that you want to go in and compete against a lower level of competition, well, then you're not a true athlete.
Right. Well, it's like now, just going to that level, going to like the whole idea of steroids, right? So when you have, let's take the transgender argument out of it for a minute, and let's just talk about football or baseball or any popular U.S. sport, right? There's a reason they test for that shit.
There is.
There's
Absolutely.
a reason, again, in the UFC, there's a reason you have weight classes. There's a reason across the country you have age demographics. It's to promote and enhance and subjugate everybody to fair play across the board. Now, obviously, you get to a point as you get older, let's say in the NFL, there is no weight rule, right?
No.
Some positions you want to be a little leaner, some positions you want to be a little heavier. But there are rules that state you have to play at least 2 years of collegiate football before you can be drafted into the NFL.
Right.
One, because at 19, 20, you were still physically developing. And they don't want 19-year-olds in the NFL with 33-year-old men who are fully grown who will fucking destroy their lives. There is rules, and most importantly, it is to safeguard everyone's physical health.
Absolutely. And as it should be.
Now, if you're in the NFL, there's a reason that they do random blood screening and urine testing.
Right. Drug testing.
Drug testing. Right. It's random. It's random for a reason.
Right.
Everybody and anybody is subject to it.
Right.
But they do it to enhance and promote fair play.
Of course.
It's not perfect, but if you get caught, you get suspended.
Right.
You get caught multiple times, you're out of the fucking league.
You're out of the league. That's the end of
You
it.
can't do this. You are a liability to other people.
Listen, they have literally stopped people from being in the Hall of Fame because of it.
That's
how serious. Right. That's how serious it is. So listen, even if you continue to play, chances are, if you were a Hall of Famer, you no longer are. You'll have an asterisk next to your name forever. Like, look, I mean, just to use John Jones as an example, right? He's by far, I don't care. He got popped for steroids twice. Okay. I believe with or without the steroids, he's the greatest UFC fighter of all time. He always will be. There's no one that will ever compare to him. Unfortunately, he made a bad decision and he got popped for it. And do I think they'll keep him out of the Hall of Fame? No, I don't, because the UFC is not as stringent.
It's a little bit of a different sport than like MLB.
And because they understand, I think, a little bit more that, listen, you make a mistake, but when you're undeniably the best, you're undeniably the best.
But is he undeniably the best because he took steroids?
No, he's not, because he only popped for it before 2 fights, and he has a massive career that far exceeds that. So, and they test randomly before every fight. So, and he needs to be in the USADA pool for 6 months leading up to a fight. So I don't know how it works in the MLB or the NFL. I'm pretty sure they're a lot more stringent when it comes to boxing and UFC, though.
For drug testing.
For drug testing.
Yeah.
So I believe that he would have probably had come up positive more times than that had he been consistently doing it throughout his career.
Jones
would have.
So do you think he would have been tested positive more?
I think he would have tested. If he was doing it consistently, I think, yes, he would have got popped
then
more.
he is, I say this is where it gets a little tricky now, right? Because taking steroids does not necessarily make you a better athlete.
No, it doesn't. But when you're the best of the best, it gives you an edge that will probably not give most.
If you're already an elite athlete, you're taking it. But is he an elite athlete because he took steroids? This is a chicken or egg argument. You could position it both ways. You could say, well, he is elite. Well, is he elite because he was faster, because he had more testosterone, more steroids in his body, and the result of that caused him to be able to have better endurance, him to be able to move quicker for a longer period of time. In baseball, you can look at it like, yeah, it can make you run faster, I guess. But like, Barry Bonds is a great example. Does that help you see 102-mile-an-hour fastball better because you're on steroids? No. Does it make you swing the bat faster, though? Can you get the bat around? Can you move your hips quicker to get the bat to the ball to be able to hit it further? Yeah. It's hard to say specifically and explicitly what steroids can do or any performance-enhancing drug can do for you in a game.
Right.
But it turns into, and this is where it gets slippery and it gets messy, it turns into that chicken or egg argument. Is John Jones the greatest because he took steroids, or was he the greatest and he was amplified by that because of the steroid use he took?
Yeah,
I don't know.
So I'm a realist. So I'll be honest. I think with or without it, I think he's the best ever. I think he achieves the same things that he achieves. I think he may have achieved them in a different manner. He may not have been as dominant as he was in the fights he was in. Possibly. That might have been it. But he was so dominant that I don't care what he was on. I mean, the advantage in his skill set was so clear. This wasn't like a strength thing, right? Like you could watch him go out and fight. Like you could tell. Sometimes people just go in and they're overbearingly strong. Like you're just like, what the fuck? Like who is this guy? That's not what it was. It was his skill set. That's how quick he moved, his fight IQ. And you could see it in his fighting techniques. So do I think it gave him an advantage? Yeah, I think it did.
Of course it did. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken it.
I think he would have been probably a little bit less dominant in the fights he had, but I think the outcome inevitably would have been the same. I think he's that great.
It's difficult because if you look at the way people take performance-enhancing drugs across different sports, right? Like, what's a clear-cut example of how bodybuilding? If you take, there's not, I don't want to say, I'm not diminishing it. There's not much to bodybuilding. Here's that weight. Go pick up that weight.
Yeah, I think they would probably wouldn't appreciate that classification.
I get it, but my point is that there's not 76 different components to it. There's a form to it.
There is.
But you need to lift that weight. What is it? The deadlift, right? You need to deadlift that weight. I'm not saying there's not form. I'm not saying there's not practice. But
it's hard work.
Correct.
Yeah.
But taking steroids could have a direct impact on your ability to lift that weight.
Oh, absolutely.
Versus other sports, it's difficult to say exactly what specifically steroids is enhancing for you. Maybe it makes you run a little faster, jump a little higher, but it's not as clear cut. It's difficult to say with things like UFC.
I mean, something we'd have to look into, but I'm pretty sure that weightlifters would take a different combination of steroids than, let's say, a UFC fighter. So I guess depending on what you're looking for, there's different steroids.
Yeah, there's not a steroid.
Right. Like there's different ones that serve different purposes. It's a compound
of different, molecular structures that are put together to enhance A, B, or C, or A through Z 16 times over.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So just with this, obviously we were talking about the differences between the trans females, trans woman, I apologize, and cis females. So, if there's that discrepancy, right, between someone taking steroids and someone not, I mean, I don't see how no one understands that it's basically the same difference, right? Like, yeah, you're saying that once transitioning, that difference minimizes.
But if it's post-puberty, it's not. If it's post-puberty.
Well, what I'm saying, my point, like, to them is that if you can, like, they have these arguments all the time, like with men versus men, women versus women, steroids versus not, that there's a slight advantage. And it's not even the same advantage that trans women have over cis females, but there's an advantage. So if you can say that there's an advantage in that, how can you try to overlook even the small advantage you're saying you have from trans woman to cis female? I mean, it's basically the same thing. You're basically a female on steroids. You may not be a male, but you're a female on steroids for all intents and purposes. That's what you are. So why should you be able to compete against them with that physiological edge?
I think even going, so Leah Thomas is, I hate to keep singling her out, but it's definitely the most popular example.
Oh, for sure.
But if you have somebody who, even before transitioning, already holds quote unquote world records for females. So if you have a male swimmer who's a top 500 swimmer nationally, collegiately ranked as a top 500, 500 already has the world record. So when Leah Thomas, I believe, as a swimmer before she transitioned,
She was male for the same college.
yeah, her position or her ranking was 500 and something in the
465th.
465th.
Yes.
But even as she was ranked 465th, she would have already technically held female records.
Her speeds would have been consistent with female record holders.
Right.
Yeah, at 400
Before she transitioned.
Right. So it just goes to show you.
How do you tell me that when she began her transition, that she wasn't going to dominate? She already did before she transitioned. She was already technically a world record holder.
But what the point that they were saying was that because of the transitioning, that those times would not be the same. And maybe they're not. I'd have to look. I don't know. Maybe her times are slower.
Or dropped after she began
maybe they
transitioning.
did.
Yeah.
But that should just go to show you at 65th in the world how dominant she was as a cis male.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's and to think that those times got slower and she still dominated in the fashion that she did.
Now, here's the thing, though. So we talked about this, and I want to get into this part, too. I don't believe that, my personal opinion, people aren't transitioning and going through these intense mental and physical changes. If Leah Thomas feels that she is assigned woman at birth or should be woman at birth, God bless her. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
So do I. I
Transition.
agree.
But now it becomes this thing, well, what is she supposed to do, right? She wants to compete.
Right.
And, I don't have an answer for that. I don't know if you create a cis league and a trans league. I don't know what the answer is, but I still can't help but believe that there's an unfair advantage that she possesses over people who are genetically born female.
Right. I mean, you'd have to create some kind of alternative league because, I mean, listen, they have alternative leagues in play now. They do. I mean, and we just said there's reasons for it.
Yeah.
So it's not beyond like the stretch of imagination to think that they would develop another league for trans women and trans men.
Yeah.
And I don't see anything wrong with it, to be honest with you. Now, maybe they would. I don't want to speak for the trans community, but I think it's middle ground. I really do. I think it gives you the ability to continue doing what you love to do. I think you're going to competing against a pool of people that are in that level of competition with you, who can compete with you, who are going to give you a run for your money. I mean, come on, I was a competitor. I played sports. I played golf fairly seriously. I would never want to play against somebody who didn't challenge me or test me.
Well, take it from the other position too. If you were going against somebody, let's say you were, we both wrestled in high school. You played golf. I did football. I did baseball. I did track and field. If I was going against somebody who I knew was yoked up on the juice, be like, this is fucking bullshit.
Right.
Like this is clear as day. Like this is an unfair advantage that I cannot get above this. And the biggest difference to me, and we talked about this also earlier today, and even we've talked about it many times before, there's a difference, right? So let's say, for example, and I'm going to use a niche sport here, but just to clarify, let's say our high school had skiing. That was one of the sports that they offered, right? Skiing is predominantly done by people of affluence. It's just a fact. It's expensive. Yeah. The skiing, the snowboards are expensive. Skis are expensive. The poles are, the outerwear is expensive. It's an expensive fucking sport to do.
Right.
Let's say you have participant A, participant B. Take the transgender argument out of it for a second. You have two males. Let's say male A comes from a family of affluence, male B, middle class family, but affluence for male A, his family goes ahead and hires him a private trainer.
Right.
Let's say it was a former fucking Olympian that is like very respected at their craft, very respected at what they do. You can now argue that person A has an unfair advantage. Now, what does person B do to overcome that? Do they have to spend more time on the slopes? Do they have to spend more time watching video?
Right.
I don't have an answer for that, but you could argue it creates an unfair advantage. What you cannot argue is that it creates an unfair biological advantage.
Right, or physical advantage.
Physical advantage, right? So if you have two people playing basketball and listen, athletics, eye-hand coordination, like there's a science behind all of this.
Absolutely.
Like some people have better eye-hand coordination than others. Some people can catch a ball and throw a ball more accurately than others.
Right.
So what do you need to do if you don't have the best eye-hand coordination? I go to the baseball argument. A-Rod, given he got popped for steroids.
Right.
Prior to that, though, in late 90s, early 2000s, A-Rod was a better baseball player than Jeter. Now, being a New Yorker, being a diehard Yankee fan, Jeter's my guy.
Right.
But there's no question Jeter needed to spend more time on the diamond throwing. He needed to spend more time lifting. He didn't have those natural abilities. But you can't sit here and argue, well, it's unfair because A-Rod was born genetically better. He was born taller. I'm not going to be in the NBA, Chris.
Right.
Shocker. 37 years old. I'm 5'10".
I can't believe it.
I'm not going to make the league.
Can you dunk a basketball?
Fuck. In high school, I could dunk if I could palm it,
Right.
I could dunk it.
You could dunk it?
Yeah, like
All
a kickball or like a tennis ball or a softball. Now, if I can smack the bottom of the net, it's a good day for me. I
guess your vertical declined a little bit.
Yeah, it's gone down. As the weight goes up, the vertical goes down. It's a crazy positive correlation.
I always thought the heavier you get, the higher you can jump.
Yeah, you would think. I can roll faster. But going back to all of it, the point is people are going to have predisposition advantages over other people all the time. But when you create a biological, it's not fair.
No, it's not. The point is you can overcome the types of disadvantages you're talking about by simply putting in more work. So yeah, does it suck? The reality is sports are very political in a lot of situations, and some people get fast tracked to the elite level. Could be connections, could be money, could be anything. They were prodigies growing up, and someone just saw them at the right time in the right place. And it's unfortunate that somebody would have to work so much harder than that person.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, the people that have to work for it like that, they develop a type of drive, right? Like something that
they get a hunger,
like an innate force inside them that just
they got a work ethic.
Yeah, work ethic. Maybe even bitterness or resentment toward those people, and they work harder to achieve where they need to be at the level they want to be at. And you really can't replace that with anything. And most of those guys, if you look at some of the top guys in the world and what they do, they did not have it easy coming up. They really weren't. Look at like Tiger Woods, dude. He didn't have it easy coming up. I mean,
his dad probably beat the shit out of him.
Well, he had no life. I mean, he was just like, that was it. I mean, that was a time where they had a problem with colored people playing on golf courses still. I mean,
as he was coming up,
he was coming up.
His dad's black and mom was Thai, right?
Yeah, it was. So think about the things he had to overcome, the naysayers, the people that will probably fast tracked over him.
Racial disadvantages.
Right, the racial disadvantages, all the shit that he had to deal with coming up. And let me tell you, I guarantee you with someone like him, it only made him work that much harder. And look, he came onto the tour and he fucking crushed everybody.
You can create a relentless hunger in yourself if you're faced from those disadvantages at an early age. And there's one of two ways. Well, there's, I guess, three ways. One, you can be indifferent about it. Two, you can say, I got no shot. Let me, go get an accounting job. Or three, you can become Tiger Woods and become the nastiest golfer of all time.
Yeah, I think the point is there's disadvantages you can overcome, and then there's ones that you can't.
Is there any time, though, when you see an athlete like that where they have that hunger? Like, Tiger wasn't friends with people on Sunday.
No, they have some crazy stories about it.
Yeah. And so, you don't see that very often. Like, now when you look at, the PGA specifically, they're all buddy-buddy. And that doesn't bother me. The Jordans, the Larry Birds, the Tiger Woods. Yeah. Those guys were just ruthless. I'm here to take your soul.
Right. And that was part of the whole persona, right? That's what really fucked with people's heads. Aside from the fact that he had 30,000 people following him on a hole. Something that people just were not used to it. Like the commotion, and the chaos that just surrounded him was already in your head. I mean, and then to just be in a group with someone on a Sunday, the final day, and it's Tiger Woods and the guy's winning it like a 35% clip.
Dude, people love greatness.
It was crazy, dude. He was in your head from fucking day one. And if you happen to be fortunate enough, if you even want to call it that, to be in the final group with him on a Sunday, you were done. Most people crumbled under the pressure.
Yeah.
It's not like it was neck and neck, right? There are a handful of times where things stayed neck and neck with him.
2008 U.S. Open,
right,
Rocco Siffredi.
Right, that was it.
Right? Rockstar is a porn star. Who am I thinking of?
No, Rocco Mediate,
Dude,
yeah. Rocco
I remember
Mediate.
watching that fucking putt at my mom's house in Poughkeepsie. I was watching it with my stepdad.
That was to tie it.
And so his knee was fucked up.
Yeah.
He had a horrible approach shot, got it on the green. I remember watching that putt. This was not the final round. This was to get into the
overtime extra holes.
Oh yeah, because I think they played a full round the next day.
Yes. No, they didn't. I don't think they completed a full round. So I forgot how they did it.
I think that almost certain U.S. Open they don't do one.
It might have been
whatever.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
That
We gotta
fucking putt
find
though.
out.
Like people love greatness.
Did you see the gallery?
People lose their shit.
It's not even just the putt. Like, forget about, all right, if you see the putt, like, I don't think people understand, like, the putt itself on that green at that speed, on that angle he was at, on the best of circumstances is a near probably, maybe you make it 15% of the time. Maybe. With that gallery and that moment,
That
with
pressure.
that type of pressure, probably
US
goes
Open
down to like,
in a major.
right, probably goes down to like 3% of the time. And dude, he fucking drained it like it was nothing.
With a bad knee.
With a, yeah, like, I mean, like, but those are the people that rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and you can't teach that. You can't. I believe you can't teach it. Something like that, you either have ingrained in you or you don't, because you're either someone that rises to the occasion when you're under the spotlight or you're someone that crumbles.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that stuff is inherently learned from a younger age when you're facing disadvantages for a number of reasons, whether it's physical, whether it's socioeconomical, whatever it may be. But I think that is something you can take away from adversity.
It is. I think the more adversity you go through, the tougher you become, for sure. Right? You get thicker skin, you get wiser, you work harder, because you just have to try to always keep up with the pack. You just do.
Yeah.
And then inevitably, you know, what I think in most occasions, it pays off.
Yeah.
It just does.
But if you're, a 5'6" Irish dude, you're probably not going to be a running back in the NFL.
No, I don't even if you could compete, I don't even think they'd look at you.
Yeah, I'm a 5'10" Italian dude. I wasn't going to make it in the NFL. I'm not
Right.
going to make it in the NBA. I'm not going to make it in the It's like when your brother and I go golfing on Sundays and I hit a bad shot, you know what I do?
Drink a beer.
Yeah. It's like, I don't practice.
Right.
I don't play. I'm not here to get my cue card.
Right.
Like, I didn't think I was going pro after this round. I didn't think I'd get fucking
Right.
a scout out there like, shit, you want to move to Florida?
Right.
You want to quit your job and play full time?
Right.
Like, what did I think was going to happen? I didn't practice. I'm half drunk.
Right.
Like, of course
there-
it went in the water.
You're there to have fun.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I mean, you should be able to.
There's the other things I think about too is like I used to not watch Sports Center when the Yankees lost. I was just like, or like the Giants lost, and I'm just like,
Oh, I love when the Giants lose, so.
because you're a dirty Cowboys fan.
That's right, baby.
Born and
Let's
raised
go
in New York.
Dallas. Yeah.
But as I get older too, I also start like we talked about this plenty of times, like where I put my energy. And I know
Right.
we're digressing a little bit, but like, what do I care about the 24-year-old who doesn't know me? Like, what was that scene in A Bronx Tale where he's crying about Mickey Mantle? And he goes, "Does Mickey Mantle pay your bills?"
Right.
Like, what do you care about Mickey Mantle for?
Right.
So it's just, I guess I get older. I'm like, what do I care? Like, I want him to win. I want my team to do good. I want my city to do good. That's why
Right.
you love organized sports. But at the end of the day, I cannot lose sleep over it anymore. It's like, Like, if the Giants lost in the Super Bowl, it would suck. But also, I still got to go to work on Monday.
Right. Well, yeah, you can't let things drag you down like that.
Right. Like,
Some people get incapacitated by that.
Right.
That
I'm just
is-
like,
that is
fuck.
wild. My friend Paul he's like a huge Jets fan. This fucking guy. God forbid, dude, that they don't win a game or they don't score a touchdown. This guy loses his mind on every play.
Yeah.
I can't.
Should've
even
run
get-
it.
I can't even.
Oh, you
get
want to be the
over it.
coach? You
He's
should be the
wild,
coach.
bro. It is wild. Absolutely wild. I mean, I'm a huge Dallas fan, but I mean, I just can't.
But when's the last time you sat down and watched the full game?
It's been a while, dude. I'm usually
last-
so exhausted on Sundays, and
You got 16 things to do.
I'm wiped. Look, we're here now. Aside from this, I work every day.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. Don't get me wrong. I always make time to watch the UFC, though.
What's on?
It's
It
like my
helps us on
one. It's
Saturday
my one
nights.
real pleasure in life, like recreationally outside of work.
I do like the UFC.
I love it.
But again, that's Saturday night at 10 o'clock.
Right. It's
Right?
late.
It's
right.
different than like a 4 p.m.
Right.
Tuesday game where it's like, it's already the fourth inning. I just got home from work. I got to put a load of laundry in. I got to make dinner. I got to make 6 phone calls. I know I got a dozen unanswered emails. I got a client complaining that one of my guys showed up. I don't have time to watch baseball right now.
Right. Wash and fold, baby. Wash and
Too
fold.
cheap for that. I'll wait till I have like 4 loads
I love it.
and I'll bring everything to the laundromat with my bedding, do it all within an
Right.
hour and a half. And I'm like, this is great.
Dude, I was away on a job not too long ago, and we found this wash and fold place. Not to get off topic, but we're just talking about it. And I I'll tell you, bro, I left my clothes there. I went back home down south. So I was up in St. Augustine. And,
Which is like 4 hours from
like
here?
4 hours from here. So I said, fuck it. I'll just leave all my work shit up here. I'll just send it to the wash and fold. I'll pick it up on my way back. Dude, it can't have been more than like maybe 8 pounds of clothes, possibly. I go, there's like $85. It's like, you fucking scumbag. What? I couldn't get over
What
it.
they charge you? Because in New York, it's what, like $1.20, $1.30 a pound?
A pound. Yeah, dude, it was just an outrageous place. I mean, don't get me wrong. They gave you like these nice, like crazy bags. Like they would definitely cost money. I don't think I realized where I went. And yeah, it was fucking like $86 for no joke, like 8 t-shirts and like 4 pairs of work pants and socks.
What did they say? Well, you were like,
So what are they going to say? Oh, that's our pricing. You know,
what do you charge me per
here's
shirt?
the price guide. Did you not see it when you walked in and gave it to us?
This is like $14 a t-shirt?
I guess I'm the asshole for assuming that they charge $85 a pound. Fucking hell. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, dude. It was outrageous. Needless to say, I didn't go to that wash fold again while I was up there. But I guess you pay for convenience, right? You pay to be lazy.
Time or money, my man.
That's it.
You're going to get fucked one way.
So yeah, we're digressing a little bit, but
A lot of it. Talking about trans athletes too. Laundry.
right, wash and fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think there are biological differences that give an advantage, and I don't see it as fair. I'm not, I don't have the answer. I don't know what to say.
No.
I just don't think that it's fair if you have a biologically born male who transitions to female competing with other females. And I think if you look at the stats on average, the majority of the population would agree. I'm not using that to defend my position on it. I'm using it because I think that's the majority of the people share this sentiment. It creates an unfair physiological advantage.
Right.
It's not a debate. It's science. When I was in high school, dude, and even in college for a short period of time, taking sports away from me would have killed me, dude. Like it was.
Yeah, I get it.
When I thought about everything happening with COVID, the past couple of
Right.
years, 2020, 2021, where everything was, remote, no one was in schools, the first thing I thought of was what that would have done to me emotionally, meaning I couldn't do football, couldn't do wrestling.
Right.
And that's what I thought of, like these fucking kids who have trained and worked so diligently, whether they're 13, 14, 15, they could have been doing this since they were 5 years old. To have that taken away from you would have killed me. This idea of transitioning, you doing what you feel you're doing because you're born into this body or you were born into the wrong body, support that so much. But
Absolutely.
it's an unfair advantage. You're not going to convince me otherwise.
No, you can't. I mean, listen, I told you, I get it. I do. I would hate to have something that I love stripped from me also. And I guess it's unfortunate because unfortunately you can't step on somebody else's hopes and dreams because you don't want to lose yours. You can't. So I think, again, I don't know the answer. I do know the answer is not crushing everybody else in your path. And I think somebody needs to come up with a way so that everybody can be happy and everybody can play sports the way that they want to in a fair forum where everybody competes on the same level and nobody has any physical advantages,
Yeah.
or at least physiological advantages. I mean, we don't allow steroids, like we said, for that reason. So if you
Creates an unfair physical advantage.
if you are a trans woman that has a higher testosterone level than a cis female, beyond what the norm should be, it's pretty clear to me. It's the equivalency to playing a female who's on steroids, and you should not be competing in the same forum as a cis female at that point.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if it bothers people that I have that feeling about it, but I sympathize with the women who work their entire lives to accomplish what they accomplish. I mean, if you don't understand what someone has to go through to achieve what these women and men have to go through to achieve, the constant work and the sleepless nights and the training.
And we're not talking about the junior levels. We're not talking about high school. We're
everything.
talking about like as you start getting to college and then professional and then like the top
Right.
tier of whether it be world or Olympic stage, it's a very small percentage of the population.
It's 1%.
Right. So, well, and I think Olympic is like 0.1 of 0.1. So it's minimal.
Yeah, it's small. I mean, listen, the point is they go through unbelievable adversity. They put themselves through everything and anything. They fight tooth and nail to be the best of what they do. They have hopes and dreams, and they do everything and sacrifice everything to achieve them. So to have somebody just come in and take that from you out
And
of
I
the
think-
fucking blue, I mean, imagine having something like that happened to you after fucking 20 years. Some of these people start training when they're fucking 5, and then you go into college and you're ranked first in the nation. And then I keep going back to Leah Thomas. She was fucking a senior. She came in the last year of college, and I forgot who it was. It was what's her name? I have it right here. It was Riley Gaines. She was ranked like 3rd in the nation at that time. She had a goal to be an NCAA champion. And then that same year, when Leah Thomas came in, she had no idea who she was. She knew the number 2 ranked. And then out of nowhere, she was like, who the fuck is this girl, basically? Like, who is she?
Yeah.
She had all these records. Like, she had no idea. And then it slowly came to light. And I swear, it's almost like she thought she was like she was missing something, she said. Like,
well, not just the athletes I think about the parents as well, right? Because if you think about, like you said, to be a top tier athlete, very few of these athletes at a, world or Olympic level, collegiate level even, it's not easy to play sports in college. You got to be pretty darn good at what you do.
Absolutely.
Even if it's D3, D1, D2, D3, if you're playing a sport at a collegiate level, you're pretty good at what you do.
100%.
But you said, a lot of them start training at 4 or 5 years old, right? Well, a 5-year-old's not driving themselves to swim practice.
No.
These early mornings, 4 or 5 a.m., where you get a parent coming up. If you got parents coming up, I don't know if you've ever seen like hockey, for example, you get Pee-wee leagues, 5, 6, 7-year-old. They play at 5 a.m. They play at 6 a.m. So in the middle of, Nebraska in the Midwest, where it's wind chill of -20, you got parents getting up, taking their kids to do this. It's a cost of doing it, not just the monetary cost, but cost of time.
Right.
All the work and effort that the parents are putting in to let their children follow their dreams. Then you get to this next level, you get to the collegiate level, you get to the world level, and it's just kind of uprooted by somebody who, not saying that person didn't put in the work, not saying that person didn't do 5 a.m. practices either. I get their frustrations. And I see it from, the argument of the people who support that trans athletes should be able to support. I get your arguments as well. I get that the work and effort and dedication and time that they put in, it's not less valued. It's not unwarranted.
No, I think that, but the problem is, like, you have to be able to put yourself in that position, right? So, like, if you're on the opposing side, right, if you're the trans woman, like, you need to take a step back and think to yourself, like, what if that was me?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if I was just this prospect and I was going to be the fucking best at like the best of the best. And then just out of nowhere, like, somebody comes out of it and just gets snatched from you. Like, how would you feel?
After putting 10, 15, 20 years of work, dedication, effort.
I don't think enough people put themselves in the other person's shoes. Like, you need to sympathize to a degree with where they're coming from. Like, it's not easy. It's not like this is something that has been a norm since the beginning of time. This is new for everyone.
Yeah, that's the thing. And again, not having that answer, not having that solution, it's easy to take a position on something and say, well, do this, or you shouldn't be able to do that. And it's more difficult when, like, I don't have a solution for it. But, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's almost a lose-lose at this point, because I want everybody to have a fair and even playing ground, but I want people who, again, the classifications and the divides you have, there's a reason that in the, soccer, for example, or football, if you're in Europe, there's a reason you have a women's World Cup and a men's World Cup.
Right.
Like, that's not by mistake. That's intentional by design.
Absolutely.
What was it? The U.S. World Cup played like a bunch of 15-year-olds, like one of those like elite prep academies.
Oh, right. And they beat the shit out of them.
They beat the shit out of the Women's World Cup team.
Yeah.
And the Women's World Cup team responded by saying, yeah.
Right. What did you expect?
Yeah. They're
No.
physiologically different than us. And I hate using the term better, but when it comes to competition, when it comes to athletics, oftentimes, now, that's not saying, I don't want to use that term better, right? Because if you look at like women
gymnasts, the skill set could be the same. They could just be more efficient in how they execute.
There are things that women gymnasts do that no man could ever possibly do. Like, not physically possible. When you look at someone like Simone Biles, like the way she is on the floor routine, dude, it's insane. It's fucking so cool to watch.
But again, she's a freak.
She is. God bless him.
She's not in a bad way either.
No, she's a freak at her sport. She's a freaking monster.
Right. She's like a once in a lifetime type.
So I want to reiterate this, dude. We're not speaking down to anything. Trans community, right at the camera, we love you, we support you, but we can have these beliefs that there are differences biologically and physiologically, and sometimes mixing them together can create unfair advantages. That's all.
No,
that's the position.
That is the position. Listen, everybody deserves to be treated fairly. Everybody. And I don't care who you are, what you believe in, how you want to be classified, what you want to be referred to as, whatever your pronouns are, anything in life. If it makes you happy, then I'm all for it. Again, the only thing I'm not for, and I've said this and I'll say it again, is just I don't like doing things at the expense of other people. So as long as I can find happiness within myself and people respect me and my decisions and I'm not doing it at the cost of others, then I think that's fine. And again, I want to say I don't think that anybody does things intentionally at the cost of others. And that's fine. But once you become complacent in it, once you realize you're doing it at the cost of others, you need to take a step back. Because once you become complacent, once you realize it and don't do anything to correct it, then you are intentionally doing it. And there's no other way to look at that.
Yeah, you try something once, you're doing it after that.
That's it. At that point, once your attention's drawn to it, you either recognize it or you don't. But if you do and you continue down that path, now you're being intentional about it. And once you start being intentional about things like that, you're wrong. And I don't care who you are, how you identify, male, female, gay, trans, it doesn't matter. That goes for every human being in this world, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it, my friend.
That's our stance.
That's our stance. And look, as things
Robbie's
change,
sweating bullets right now.
No, I think this was a good conversation.
No,
to have,
I know,
man.
I'm
I
only
think
joking.
it
was a good
super
conversation.
important. Again, you can, and this is what makes it so difficult. And not that I was hesitant to have this conversation. I just wanted to make sure we could have it respectfully. But,
Of course.
you know, what makes it so difficult now is if you say you're one thing, you have to be 17 other things, right? So if you identify, not to get political on this, but if you identify as liberal, you need to have these beliefs. God forbid you have one feeling one way and one feeling another and one feeling here and one, like you can be positioned in different ways. It's so difficult to say that, you know, if you say you support the trans community, which we do, then all of a sudden you have to have all these ideologies as well. If you say you're liberal, then you have to have all these beliefs. That's not necessarily true. You can have independent thought. What makes this conversation difficult is, God forbid, you go against the mainstream media idea of having a thought that is researched, backed up, founded, and you formulate your opinion after doing all of that research. If it's not the popular opinion, you get your fucking head chewed off, and it sucks.
Well, that's part of the cancel culture that we're in today.
Right.
Honestly, it's wild. Listen, people are afraid to speak their minds today because of it, which is outrageous because you can't have discussions about anything. And if you can't have discussions about anything, you can't improve anything.
Yeah.
That's how things get resolved. That's how things get changed. That's how change happens, by
Discussion,
people being able to
conversation.
have discussions, right? Conversations about things and working their disagreements out and
But
finding
that's the
common
challenge,
ground.
though, Chris. The problem now is that nobody wants to have a conversation. If you
Well,
don't
then
believe what I believe, then you're wrong.
Then you'll never solve anything.
I agree. I agree entirely. It's
might
just
as
so
well
frustrating. You can't
just-
have a conversation without the other person being a social pariah.
Right. You might as well just bang your fucking head off the wall all day.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. You know, be open to criticism, be open to people's feelings, you know, listen, don't always look to be heard. You know, you want to be heard, that's fine, but you got to listen to other people too. It's the only way you can resolve something. It's the only way you find common ground with anybody or with any group is you have to listen to each other. And if you're going to be extreme and you're not going to take into consideration other people's feelings, then you're never going to get anywhere.
Right. You're not going to advance. You're not going to
You're
evolve.
not. You can't just be me. You have to take into consideration the other people in our society that you fucking live with. Everybody needs to coexist together. It can't be you versus the world all the time, because then it's always going to be you versus the world, because no one's ever going to come over to your side of things.
I think it's also very important to understand people can change their minds on things.
Of course.
Right? Like I watch a lot of, debates between people, and the people are bringing up, oh, well, last year you said this. Yeah, I did. And I believe that. And then this was brought to my attention, and statistic A, B, and C was brought to my attention. And
Right.
example A, B, and C was brought to my attention.
Right.
And I changed my mind. You're allowed to have a variance of opinions.
Of course.
Not everything needs to be set in stone. If you feel one thing one way in 27 years, you're not a piece of shit if you feel differently. You could have life experiences. You could have actual factual data in front of you.
Right. You just learn.
Right.
It's called learning.
It's called growing, evolving.
Education.
So don't be afraid to do that either.
Right.
That's a good thing, man.
Listen, to solve a problem, you need to understand it. And if you can't educate yourself in it, then you'll never understand it.
Well, it's
you
that
can't
saying with
solve
history.
problems you can't understand.
If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
just, be open-minded.
Yep. 100%.
Be open to have conversations. Be open to being wrong. Be open to hearing other people's points of view. Like, it's all good.
I don't know about you. I'm always right, though.
Can't imagine why people think you have this fucking cockiness about you.
Oh, Robbie, you love me. All right. So I guess that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's a wrap for today. As always, thanks guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. Be sure to continue to check our content on IG at notfornothing.podcast, TikTok, Not For Nothing Podcast, and you can check out all our episodes in full on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcast. Guys, thank you. Robbie, peace out, brother.
Later, brother.
Later, bro.